Welcome back to the Self-Care Creative Podcast, the show where I discuss everything from mental health over personal growth to creative struggles. I'm Ray, and I hope you will join me while I go down rabbit holes and interview other creatives on here. Follow and review the podcast to support the show, and let's get into today's episode. Let's talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart that I love to rant about daily if I get the chance to. Which, a podcast is the perfect place to rant a little bit about fear of failure and how our society, how it currently is, absolutely feeds into this fear of failure. Shall we start with number one, how the education system creates a fear of failure. In our school years, our life paths are pretty much the same. Like, we all go to the same, class, we're in the same grade at the same age, all that fun stuff. So when you fail too many times, you don't only get ridiculed by people around you for being a bad student or anything like that, but you will also have to retake an entire year of classes and putting you off the path of people that are the same age as you, so you pretty much lose your peg. Also, grades are really associated with your intelligence and not with discipline, which they should. Grades are so bad the way they currently are because they actually measure discipline and how neurotypical someone is, and not their actual intelligence. But that's a whole story for a different day. Overall, our human instinct to need a social network is at risk if we fail in school. If we fail too much, we have the chance of being bullied, we have the chance of having to retake classes, all that fun stuff. We just lose the people that we currently have around us, and we lose a bit of respect somewhat. It really depends what environment your school is in, but usually that's kind of what happens. Also, let's not even start about the whole system that even parents are still stuck in and pressure children and therefore make love seem conditional. Grades in school get turned into such a conditional love thing. If you don't write an A or a B, you don't get my unconditional love as a parent, pretty much. That's what it sounds like very often. Overall, everything in early life tells you that if you don't fail, you are normal and a good person. And this is how the fear of failure starts, even in children that are allowed to fail by their parents. It really does not change that much if parents allow you to fail. Even my parents allowed me to fail, or my mom allowed me to fail. I live with my mom. Even I still have fear of failure because of the system that I was put in, that we are all put in. Even if you have good parents that are very lenient and don't make it a love is conditional kind of situation, you will still you will get a fear of failure just by how the system is built currently. Number two, how your productivity is a currency in capitalism and how that gives you fear of failure. So this whole stuff does not stop once you're out of school and you're in work life. Since we are in a capitalistic world, and it doesn't matter what name you want to give it, in my country it's called social economy, I think, something like that. It's still based on the principle of capitalism. The basis of capitalism, or anything like it, is still meritocracy. If you work hard enough, you will get to rise in the social ranks. So if merit brings you further, and everybody thinks the same, everyone will work equally as hard. So if you fail at something, you will be automatically a step back from them. So that's how the system kind of creates a fear of failure. Nobody really tells the world that meritocracy is absolute BS and that it has been debunked times and times again by psychology and all types of social studies. Yeah, on top of that, just productivity. Productivity is a currency in a world that is based on capitalistic principles for the most part. It's even in countries like Germany, where I live, it's still a currency. We're just kind of sad. You should be able to get your basic stuff without needing to fear using your job to failing at something. That's also a big thing. Our survival is connected to our productivity and productivity and money. So those are kind of a loop. And when we fail at these things, we lose our like income. Now income is our survival. So yeah, that's also very interesting. Even if by law you are not allowed to work more than 40, 50 hours a week, or really depends on the laws in your countries, like the labor laws, you will still probably work more than you actually have to, just to compensate. It's often frowned upon if you leave on the clock, like if you leave exactly when you're like supposed to leave, because the other people usually stay longer, and it's like kind of a competition that gets created. But yeah, let's just talk about how the cost of living and the general income doesn't even match in most places. That's a whole like thing in and of itself. So you feel like you're failing because you can't afford life, because you feel like you don't work enough. Like this is a whole concept, a whole network of problems again. And yes, once again, I'm bashing capitalism a lot, but it has a big impact on how we see the world and on our mental health. Obviously, like I'm describing it right now pretty perfectly. So yeah, your energy is pretty much your currency to survive in the system, and the same goes for everybody else. So in your brain, you're met with the pressure of having to keep up with everybody else, and you will fall back if you fail at something. Let's not start about invisible illnesses and disabled people that simply don't have that energy, and they are pretty much left in the dust by most societies, like most countries. So like, yeah, you fear that you will go into that camp of people that are already like left in the dust. There's just fear on both sides, like fear to not do enough, and fear that if you don't do enough that you will end in like a bad situation, which usually that's actually the case. So yeah, that's just kind of sad. A kind of sad loop. Number 3, how you make your failures worse mentally. You probably have heard about cognitive distortions before, or like things like catastrophizing, like making something seem worse in your head. That's just something our brains do, and they do it more when you're mentally ill. And in our world, you are a miracle if your mental health isn't affected by everything that is going on and surrounding us. You will notice when you do something wrong, you will instantly jump to making it worse, like, and making like the long term of this worse. Like you fucked up one time, and you, first of all, the first reaction is you make it seem worse than it actually is, and then you project it onto the future, like, oh yeah, this will make my future worse, like even if it's just your job future, or like the relationship that you have to a coworker or like a person in your family, something like that. But yeah, we don't know that. But we our brain makes it worse for us when we fail, just based on like a more unstable mental health. Maybe you will also tell yourself that you are bad at something because you failed at it like once or twice, even though most things need to be started with a lot of failing or doing it very badly. But you get the gist. Like your brain just does this thing where it makes everything kind of seem worse when you fail. And it stops you from your full potential, usually. I mean, that's kind of what our brains do in this day and age, but you get the idea. Like, our brains are, like, not helping us because they grew up in the fear of failure society, so now they're, like, kind of trained to, like, see failure as bad already, and then you have cognitive distortions on top of that. It's a bad combination. Number 4, how to learn better from your failures. First of all, remind yourself that we all make mistakes and simply live in a system where sharing that is hard for everyone. But by not sharing fails, we make other people think that failure is rare, which is not the case. So like sharing it is vulnerable, but also very good for other people, so they feel less of a failure. So like if you share your failures, make people feel less like a failure. You know what I mean? Then remind yourself that starting with something new is always starting with a lot of messing up, but consistency is what makes all the positive change. Like take drawing, for example. Of course you will fail, in air quotes, at drawing in the beginning because you don't have that, like you're not born with the talent to draw. You need to do that consistently, you know what I mean? You need the discipline in that moment. It's not that you fail, it's just that you're learning most of the time. And even if you failed, usually you can fix what you failed. But sometimes the system won't let you. Anyway, there's a whole social issue and justice issue that I could go into here, but let's not go too political in this episode. I already bashed capitalism. Then remind yourself that both your thoughts and your actions aren't you. Like, what you think isn't you, and your actions also aren't you. It's when your thoughts and actions aren't aligning that is like kind of a point where like kind of need to like rethink what you're doing. Like, like self-awareness is coming in there. But yeah, you're not your thoughts and you're not your actions. Like, one failing or two failings, even 10 or dozens of fails doesn't make you a failure. Like, they don't define you. They're simply actions and thoughts. We often think we must be our actions, and that works for patterns only. Like, if you repeatedly do the same failing, then it somewhat defines you. Like, it really depends on what it is. Like, if it's a personal thing, an interpersonal thing, a communicating thing, then the pattern can mean like, yeah, that is actually how your personality is, and you need to work on your like mental health and change how you express emotions. But like, that is still not you. That is not you at your core. You know what I mean? Like, even if you do something as a pattern, yes, that needs work from yourself. But that still doesn't define you. You're not like a bad person because you have anger issues, because you can work on those anger issues by going to therapy. Stuff like that. Like, for example, if dating feels like it's full of failures, you will feel like you're the problem. You might want to check if you are looking in the wrong places, or if the problem is simply that you have basic standards and your opposite is simply not meeting them because they have too much internalized misogyny, for example. That is just one of those moments where I need to remind you all, like, that is usually, like, in dating especially, it's usually not you, especially if you already did work on yourself, and you're like, especially if you already are in therapy, or you were in therapy, or you have people around you that are pretty good at psychoanalysis. And let's be real, it's okay to still have somewhat of an attachment style issue left. Usually it's like, if you're a woman, usually it's the man that has too much internalized misogyny and doesn't work on himself and didn't go to therapy, because we live in a world where men feeling their feelings is still frowned upon by other men. Misogyny also disadvantages men. Anyway, this is a good example of like, dating fails don't always mean that you're the problem. It just means that like, you have basic standards that you won't change, which is good. Unless they're really fucking hilarious, like someone needs to be taller than you. Like, come on. I would rather have someone that has a brain than someone that's taller than me. I mean, if they have both, yeah, I guess that's a bonus, but like, yeah, you get what I mean. This is a whole topic. This is not what I specialize in, what I research and do, but you get the general idea. And most important of all, remember that failures are lessons. They are there so you can do it better next time, or see if you even like doing what you failed at. Hell, I keep failing in things I'm passionate about, but it makes me see where I need to improve. Sometimes the problem is solved by better time management, or simply researching a topic better. Sometimes the answer is to change the path completely. Those are just a few ways you can reframe failure. There are a lot more, and you will probably find more if you like read a little bit into the topic. But yeah, if you want to share how you deal with failure, I'd love to hear that on either my podcast Twitter account or on my personal social media channels that are linked in the show notes of every episode. And to finish the episode, I'd love to read you the quote that inspired me to make this episode. In school, you're rewarded for not making mistakes, and then you get out, get a job, and a lot of times you get promoted because you make very few mistakes. And so what you do is you develop a mindset that mistakes are to be avoided at all costs. It's from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age. You probably have heard about the book How to Win Friends and Influence People before, by Dale Carnegie, I think. And they made an updated version for the digital age. And this is from that book, and it's amazing, and I recommend that book. That's all I had to say about fear of failure. For now, maybe I will make another episode on it in the future, who knows. But for now, I hope you stay safe and you take care of yourself. And we see each other, or we hear each other in the next episode. Bye!